gals and guys, me Devil here, and welcome back to another episode of Cursage Gaming. For this week, I will be doing a Tomodachi Life creepypasta called Dying Happy. So the story starts off with yet again another unnamed protagonist that I shall refer to as Player, calling his or her friend, Owen, about whether or not he or she bought the new Smash Bros. Game. Smoking a cigarette, Owen replied back saying he or she bought Tomodachi Life instead. If you don't know what Tomodachi Life is, it's basically a video game where you use the buttons and control sticks on your 3DS to play the game. Owen said how funny Tomodachi Life is, and that he or she made funny looking characters, as well as immaculate songs rivaling that of the exquisite musician Cardi B. Owen stopped the call and left to go to work. While Owen was out, the player watched some YouTube videos about Tomodachi Life and was pretty intrigued about the game. Upon returning, Owen told the player that he or she wasn't able to make a custom Mii character upon starting the game due to the fact that there already was a Mii. The player found this quite odd and asked Owen if the game was used. Owen replied with yes, and they both assumed it was just that the previous owner forgot to wipe out the data. Owen decided not to erase the data because the pre-existing avatar, Mr. Happy Death, was actually pretty cool looking, and the song that the Mii made was quote-unquote fucking awesome. Owen pulled up his 3DS and booted up Tomodachi Life, and played Mr. Happy's song, which was called Dying Happy. The voice used was very robotic, kinda like how Sexter sounds in the Mortal Kombat games. The song goes like this: Everybody's dying happy, it's so awesome whenever people die. They are not alive anymore, it makes me happy. I've never been so happy. Let's all die. Hold hands, jump to our deaths. Our brains will splatter. Happy. Death is so cool. Let's all suicide. Both laughed at this terrifying song due to the fact that it sounded like something the player would write. Owen left and promised to show the actual dance of the characters the next day. The player waited several days for him or her to call him or her, but Owen never called. Whenever the player would call him or her, it would go straight to voicemail. About a week later, the player finally got a call from Owen. The player answered and was surprised to hear Owen's wife, Jenny. Jenny's voice was trembling and sounded like he or she was crying. Jenny told the player that Owen jumped off an overpass and died. But before he or she jumped off, he or she looked at Jenny and smiled. The player was angered by this revelation due to the fact that they were close with Owen. They were bread and butter. They would even do each other on a daily basis. No homo, of course. They even gave each other goodnight kisses. The player thought that Owen would at least leave a goodbye message rather than just leaving without saying anything. The player decided to buy Tomodachi Life so he or she would feel closer to Owen and remember how happy he or she was when she or he was playing it. The player found the game to be quite enjoyable and made many crazy looking Miis, and also made versions of his or herself and Owen, and made sure Owen married the most busty chick on the island. One day though, the player was shocked to receive an email from the long deceased Owen. The player thought this was Jenny at first, but thought not when the player realized it was a video file. The video was black and white and looked like it was recorded by a really dogshit webcam, similar to how high quality teachers' webcams would be on Zoom calls. The player immediately stopped the video in shock the very second the words, "Everybody's dying happy," showed up. The player just sat there in shock, confusion, ecstasy, and horror. After the player threw a hissy fit, he or she pressed continue. There were 6 Miis dancing on stage, and in the middle, Mr. Happy descended. His or her face was just 2 black holes, his mouth just a gaping black oval. Oval? And 0 hair. Just imagine a scary version of Walter White from Breaking Bad. The character started to sing the exact same dying happy lyrics that Owen told the player so many years ago. The words were funny at the time, but were now disturbing, knowing that Owen committed toaster bathtub. According to the player, the song was very upbeat despite the very morbid lyrics. The player tried forgetting about Mr. Happy, but couldn't. The player kept watching the video over and over again, and each time he or she replayed the song, he or she became less and less afraid and more accepting of the lyrics. The player had an epiphany. The epiphany goes as this. Perhaps Mr. Happy had a point. Dying happy does seem like something everyone would want to do. After all, everyone dies sometime. Why die sad? Owen wasn't sad when he died. He was smiling. Though, a smile doesn't always mean that someone's happy. They could be hiding their true feelings. Was Owen hiding his? When the player returned to Tomodachi life, he or she was greeted by the man, the myth, the legendary Abraham 387 Jackson, Mr. Happy. Sorry gals and guys, I got the wrong legend mixed up. The player shut off the 3DS in fear. The player literally sat there for hours shitting his or herself. After the player calmed down, he or she couldn't stop humming Mr. Happy's song. The player realized that maybe Mr. Happy is the one behind Owen's death. Upon returning to Tomodachi life, the residents kept saying Mr. Happy's catchphrase. Death feels so good. The player tried stopping this by changing the lyrics of the song, but it would automatically revert back. Even stranger, Mr. Happy became the most charming man on the island, and every female was in love with him. Oh jeez. Hey Bangu, I think you got some competition for man who has the most e-girls award. Apparently the Miis started dying. Every time a Mii would die, it would say, whatever the fuck the name of the Mii is, has committed suicide. Whenever you enter their apartment. Basically what you gals and guys are seeing on the screen right now. The next day, those dead Mii's apartments were gone, and the Mii next door had committed suicide. For some reason though, the player didn't really mind it as much as the first Mii that died. As the days progressed, more and more Miis would commit suicide, and the player would become less and less concerned. Eventually, the player would feel happy whenever a Mii would off themselves. The anticipation was exhilarating according to the player. Owen's death drifted further and further away from the player's mind, and began to feel happier than the player ever was in his or her entire life. After exactly 36 Miis were deceased, there was just Mr. Happy, Owen, and the player. According to the player, the suicides occurred in descending order to the apartment layout. The order of the suicides will then be Owen, the player, and finally Mr. Happy. The player knew that Mr. Happy couldn't die because he had to be there to make others happy. Without Mr. Happy, the player would never have realized that we all should die happy. The player now realizes that Owen committed RE3 remake because he or she was happier than ever before. He or she wanted to die free and happy. The player now wanted to do the same. the following morning the player got up to play Tomodachi Life, and was delighted to see Owen dead on the floor. Mr. Happy started playing his mixtape, and the player started dancing to it. The player knew his or her me would die the next day, so he or her. The player concludes the story saying that he or she will jump to his or her death tomorrow, and will smile at someone he or she loves. The player then thanks Mr. Happy. Well, that was quite a lengthy creepypasta. Obviously not as lengthy as my cock, but that's besides the point. This story is easily top 13 best creepypastas ever made. Easily. The real star of the story was easily the antagonist, Mr. Happy Death. His horrifying Walter White-like appearance, and the fact that he makes everyone he comes in contact with spiral into madness and eventually suicide, really unnerved me and kept me biting my nails as I read on. Honestly, that was a good thing because I didn't cut my nails in like a whole week, so thanks for that, Mr. Happy. He is easily top 3 best creepypasta antagonists ever made. The only ones beating him, are Ethan Zobriar for My Friend Ethan, and Jesse Pinkman.exe. I'll get to that one soon, don't worry. The build-up is done really well, so major kudos to the author. The author should really consider writing for Vince Gilligan. No, for the realism, I can say this with 100% certainty that it is absolutely real. The reason being that this story actually comes with a video. Yes, gals and guys, that's right. The video in question is the video that Owen sends the player. Now it is recorded via a really crappy camcorder, so it is pretty hard to watch, but if you get past that, it is really frightening. The only issue I have with this story is that there wasn't enough Mr. Happy. The less I saw of Mr. Happy made me Mr. Sad. God, that was fucking atrocious. God damn. Amy Schumer could have said something funnier than that. In conclusion, 10 out of 10 creepypasta, and is definitely a must-read. Links to the fucking shit down below. So this has been another episode of Cursage Gaming, and if you like what you saw, make sure to like, comment, and smash that motherfucking subscribe button for more banger videos. Make sure to punch that like button in its face like a boss to enter my free gift card giveaway. Dislike it if you dislike it. This is me, Skeledevil, and